David Copperfield begins with the title character recounting the events surrounding his birth, which came months after his father died. David's mother, Clara, is a pretty young, naive widow when David is born. Clara relies on her loyal servant Peggotty to raise her son. In the introduction, David's happy early childhood takes a sudden turn when Clara marries the cold, controlling Mr. Murdstone, who brings his strict sister into the house. The Murdstones treat David cruelly. Mr. Murdstone beats David and sends him away to boarding school and barely allows Clara to speak to her son. David has a warm relationship with Peggotty, and Peggotty takes David to visit her family in Yarmouth, where David meets Peggotty's brother, Mr. Peggotty, and his two adopted children, Ham and little Emily. During the rising action, David attends the Green boarding school Salem House, where the students are regularly beaten. David befriends James Steerforth, an older boy, who becomes a kind of hero and mentor to him, despite his being mean and selfish. David's mother dies and he returns home where the Murstones neglect him. Mr. Murstone sends David to London to work in a rat infested bottle warehouse. At age 10, David is on his own in London, staying in a room rented from Mr. and Mrs. Micawber. He earns barely enough to pay for his meals. When the Micawbers move to Plymouth, David decides to run away to Miss Betsy, his eccentric great aunt, who adopts David and gets him in the Dr. Strong School in Canterbury, a much better school than Salem House. David lives in the home of Mr. Wickfield and Agnes, Mr. Wickfield's daughter. The devious Uriah Heep, Mr. Wickfield's humble assistant, is also introduced. While he attends school, Agnes and David become best friends. David visits London and runs into Steerforth, and the two go to Yarmouth to visit Peggotty's for a few weeks. There, Emily has just become engaged to him, but practically on the eve of her marriage, Emily runs away with Steerforth, who is betrayed David's friendship as well. David goes back to his apprenticeship in London and falls in love with Dora Spenlow, his boss's daughter. But Miss Betsy loses her fortune and David changes career goals to support his aunt and marry Dora, that is finally able to do after much hard work. However, her childish ways cause difficulty in their marriage. After bearing a child who dies soon after birth, Dora becomes ill. After a long search, Mr. Peggotty finds Emily, who has left Steerforth. Dora's illness worsens and she dies. David postpones dealing with his grief and goes to Yarmouth to give him a farewell message from Emily. In the climax of the novel, a terrible storm hits Yarmouth and kills him while he attempts to rescue a shipwrecked sailor. The sailor turns out to be Steerforth, but both men drown. During the following action, David's friends emigrate to Australia to start new lives. David goes abroad to cope with his grief and finally realizes how much he has always loved Agnes. He returns to England and reveals his feelings to her. David and Agnes marry and have a family. In David Copperfield's resolution, David becomes a famous author, and years later, he is gratified to learn that all of his immigrant friends have found happiness in their new lives.